trying to help us plan for, but, so it's a planning thing for the RTI committee, but it's also, if you're going to work on something, you might as well work on something productive that's going to benefit somebody.
Right, exactly.
You get a lot more motivation that way from all participants, including the kid.
Yeah.
So, what I'm thinking as I was getting ready for the meeting, I'm thinking maybe, and we talked about this when you and I met, is to have, I just want to, okay, is really look at two different goals. Goals to help classroom teachers like yourself, help him understand and help him produce
The subject
and
itself,
communicate the learning targets, and then the long-term stuff for him. What do we need to do to get this kid more consistent and tightened up? Because he's showing us signs that he is proficient, and he's showing us signs that he just struggles. And we got to start looking at it. This isn't going to get solved obviously in a half-hour meeting, but at least start the process. And that's where I think where these tier 2, tier 3 interventions are going to come and play for him. But we're really dealing with two different things. How, without being able to wave a magic wand, how are we going to get him to be successful in the classroom? And he can be successful. What accommodations do you guys need to help him communicate what he knows?
And it's really interesting. I was just thinking about that you brought up that the parents had, because I'm guessing that the parents noticed exactly what we're seeing here, and they were trying to put a label on it. Well, maybe it's dyslexia, and then we can get him some help. And I think there is something there, but I don't. It's not dyslexia.
Well, could it be a low reading score? Builder did a star.
Just take a look, and we're going to go through this, but he is all over the place in his academic history. He goes from advanced proficient to minimal, well below average, back to basic, back to proficient. He is up and down.
Is that by choice, you think?
I don't know.
When he feels motivated, he can do well. When he doesn't?
It's interesting that if you look at the WKCE scores, 4th through 8th grade, they're all done at the same time of year. And it's all, and when I was documenting all this, it's all end of October stuff. They have the dates on there. And so, you think, well, time of year, a lot of times, you can see with kids' past histories, there's certain times of year they're better than others. But he's even bouncing around then.
Did you get any Explore scores?
No, I don't have.
You want me to go pull?
Yeah, if you could.
Is there any test where they have to submit a writing sample?
Yeah, the KCE, the 4th grade and the 8th grade.
They do, so they are doing a writing sample, and that's part of is it language arts?
That would be the language arts part, yep.
Okay.
No, I didn't have, for whatever reason, when I went on a computer for the grade 8 WKC, they only have the reading and math. I don't have the rest of them, because that's the full-blown KCE in 8th grade, just like 10th grade.
But only the reading and math are there, okay.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where he came through with the written language, but it's just a stumper. I've never, the kids that I work with in the past, it's consistent. They don't bounce up and down. So, and looking at his sample that you brought in, it really looks like a developmental. He's writing things phonetically. There's the spelling and things, and I'm sure you're seeing the same things, Amy. And getting his ideas across. Sometimes I'll share the reports that we got with everybody, but it sounds like there's sometimes he's able to communicate effectively what he knows, and there's other times where it's like, well, where'd you come up with that? That's way out in left field.
And Michael asked something too about, is it by choice? He is motivated. He wants to do well. So that's not an issue at all. That he's just not. I don't care. That's not it at all.
And that's been very consistent across his history. I went through and read his elementary report cards, and always same report. Nice kid, very motivated, comes and asks for help, will seek, wants to do well, never any, other than, the negatives where, can be a little social and things like that, but nothing, atypical.
Definitely motivated.
His scores were pretty low on the Explore.
And that's the ninth
grade
one?
Yeah, and he was just administered. I might even be able to pull the 10th. They're in a pile. I don't know where they are, but I could find those maybe. So.
Now, Jeremy was saying that, because I was asking about his writing seems to be the real issue here, and he was saying for 8th grade, he couldn't get he didn't have those scores when they came out. They just had reading and math.
Yeah, I went
So
to the
would
data
be-
wise for
Yeah, and that's
8th
usually
grade.
very comprehensive too.
Yeah, in 8th grade is, yeah, it's the full-blown
Yeah,
one.
'cause I would really
But they
like to
didn't
see
have it
what
in
his,
this folder. Maybe it's in the, is that the assessment?
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I'll give you that one too.
So, I'm just gonna put those down.
Yeah.
Because it's science and social studies. They're both minimal, but right at the borderline. Well, let's go ahead, and in the interest of time, I just want to thank you guys for doing this. The intro to the process, as explained to Linda, Michael and I are on the RTI committee, and as I was talking with Linda last week about this student that came up, they were brainstorming in the science PLC. Then we had talked afterwards, and thought, well, this might be a good situation to really bring to the table for the RTI committee to look at. We're looking at, with that committee, we're looking at doing some professional development in meetings like this, kind of trying to diagnose, share data from past, share successes, share where we're getting stuck with kids in the classroom, in an attempt to help the teachers and help the students, get the kids to where they need to be. These are regular education. It's not a special ed thing right now. Special ed is a part of RTI, but it's not until way down the road, as you guys have been inundated with in the last few years with the RTI. So this particular kid is a regular ed student who is struggling, and we're seeing that. So what we're going to do with this today, we're recording it. We're meeting with the RTI committee on Monday. We're going to review the tape, because this is an activity that we've already started to try to do with the committee. We want to take, in December at the professional development, we want to take real kids that we have in class and pair them up with groups of teachers common teachers that they have, and go through processes like this. Kids that are at risk, kids that we're seeing across multiple settings having some struggles. So that's I thought, well, let's just do this. This is a real example of something that we can start doing. So that's kind of where we're at with the video camera and all this. So there's basically 3 parts to the process that we're learning about. First is kind of like a review of the data and observations, and we'll get into that. We'll just kind of go around and share. I do have some emails from people that weren't able to be here. And then we'll be able to brainstorm suggestions. It's a smoker model. It's a model for how to do this is what we're trying to use. So we'll go around until our ideas are exhausted. First we'll do some quiet, kind of write down some possible suggestions within yourselves, and then we'll just share. And then at the end, we kind of outline some next steps. I wanna make sure we're out of here by at least 1:45. We got to get going to class. And in reality, the way we work, we only have small bits and pieces of time to do this. So this will probably take a little longer as we get going, but as we start learning about this process, we'll become more efficient and streamlined as we move on. So let's why don't I just start by reviewing. I'll just kind of read what people have submitted already. Jenny Wolf, in his English 10 class that he currently has, what she's seeing is, I can definitely tell that Jimmy is having a tough time with reading and writing. He has been given texts that seem to be at his reading level, but that level is definitely below grade level. His writing, he writes very simple sentences and does not seem to get his message across. When working on writing and summarizing in class right now, for the summative assessment for the current unit, he'll be giving a speech on a graphic novel that he has completed, And she anticipates that he's going to do pretty well with that because the orally is, and he speaks very well. So that's what Jenny submitted. Megan Hopper, who was his 9th grade English teacher, so she had him last year, and she remembered Jimmy to be a frequently very eager to learn. He was willing to make up work when things weren't going well for him or he didn't score well on a test. He did struggle to get things. His reading comprehension and writing skills were on the low side. Sometimes, one suggestion that she did have him work with partners, but generally found that to be, he could get very distracted when he was doing that. And he wasn't as on task then when he was working with partners. Was very social in class. And then Mary DiMaggio just threw out some suggestions that worked for her, was that she,
In biology
last year, his freshman year, yep, that tests were read, and then at sometimes she actually had scribed, she would orally present to it and someone else would scribe the answers to the tests, and he went from he was scoring I think a D first semester and he got his grade up to a C plus range, was where he was doing. And then Amy, you also submitted something too, but I'll let you, I don't know if you want to start.
Okay, do you mind if I go?
Yeah, that'd be great, because it was a great
Okay.
feedback.
This is for a world or West
World
last year?
history.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now I kind of reviewed what he's doing and how he's doing in class. He's getting a 1. However, he has one summative missing. When I took the score out of the grade, not as a 0, he was getting a 2. And he can still complete that work. So his potential still to improve is really great, okay? He's also in my crime and law class, and he's getting a 1.7 in that class. He has all his work complete. It's a higher level class. As we talk about really difficult principles for, especially a sophomore, usually my juniors and seniors grasp the principles a little bit better. Ideas of application of law from the Constitution. We literally read the Constitution. It's not an easy document, and so we're working on that. In both classes, he can of course continue to make corrections or redo anything. What I really think he could benefit from is one-on-one instruction. I could review activities with him and things like that in study hall or after school to improve his instruction. He has attempted corrections for me before, and they haven't been any type of improvement. So he's sort of just doing the work to do it and handing something in without any change in understanding or growth in understanding. What else? Miss Skinner is also in the world history class, and she is a fabulous resource to have in class. One of the things she has done is provided reading level materials that are more appropriate for him. We did a museum ancient civilization activity, and so she specifically looked up his topic and got him some articles that would help. Again, I see the hard time with the comprehension. The higher level reading materials is difficult. In class, we typically scaffold a lot of items, so he does, it's not that he's not getting any of it. He's getting the level 2 skills, sometimes the 3, and then struggles at the 4. He is fairly good with class discussion. We had a debate in class, and he had lots of great things to say and stumbled a bit on some of his words, but had some phenomenal points, and points that took understanding of the world outside of the classroom, more practical things rather than what we had gotten from our sources in class. So I thought that was really great, and he had some great things to say. And then as far as writing, really the articulation of what his message is needs work. I have a writing sample right here that talks a little bit about, it kind of provides an insight on his writing, again, the phonetic writing. Do you want me to read it to you?
Sure.
Okay, so he wrote, and the essay was, Should America Fear Islam? And so we watched 2 videos. One was a debate on both sides, moderated by Christiana Amanpour, after the controversy of the building of the mosque in New York. And then the second video we watched was Children of the Taliban, and literally showed the madrasas in Pakistan and what happens to these kids. Okay. So he says, do you fear Islam? Well, I don't, and you shouldn't. Me either. I'm going to give you should not fear Islam. So even if you think we should, you should still read this. It might make you change your mind. E. First reason we should not fear Islam, we should fear the extremists. They are using Islam for a cover-up. The extremists have a group called the Taliban. The Taliban are the ones we are at war with. So I believe we should fear the Taliban. Second reason we should fear Islam, we should find where the Taliban are recruiting people and destroy it. And the key is to kill the Taliban and the war is over. Last, I have said everything I think is important, and that is why we should not fear Islam. So he has like a foundation, okay? There's an idea there, but it's not articulated in here at all. Also, he has a good idea of fearing the extremists, but he doesn't have the backup behind it. You know, the explanation of the Taliban and how that's different from other Muslims is not articulated there. And I spent a great deal of time in class instructing on formal historical writing. We're not using I, me, we. You know, we're using, you're the author. We know you're the one that wrote it, so we don't need to use our pronouns. But I did notice too that his format is there. You know, he has the transitions first, second, last, and so there's a foundation there. You know, and I think that's definitely encouraging.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Chemistry.
Okay, and in chemistry, and if I had brought along one of his, the last assessment that he did, and we do a fair amount of writing in chemistry. Explain what you mean, explain the concept. I want kids to be able to, and if you look at the rubric for this, the level 1 questions are basically more multiple choice where they have something down. And he does all right. You know, if the answer is there in front of him, he can usually pick out the right answer. When you get into level 3 and 4, and I want you to explain why this isn't a correct model or justify, that's where he has difficulty. And the reason I talked to Michael about it, I talked to Tim Conga, I talked to Jeremy about it, is that I'm concerned that I think he's getting some of the chemistry, but he can't express himself. He doesn't know how to, in written form anyway. I have not given him an oral test. But what I'm noticing is that the concepts in chemistry, and they're difficult for a lot of students. They're very, you know, we're asking kids to visualize things that they can't see. We're asking them to visualize an atom and electrons and clouds. That's difficult for many students. You know, and then I ask them to, well, give me a model. What would this look like? That's where he's having the real difficulty. I do have a feeling that if I did do some of the things orally with him, he would probably improve. If I let him answer orally, my concern with Jimmy is that will fix chemistry, and he will do okay in chemistry. But can we really send him out of high school not being able to make a complete thought or not be able to write a complete thought? And so that was my real concern with Jimmy, that we can do some of these interventions and help him to improve in chemistry, but I think we need a little bit more with Jimmy.
Okay, great.
I'm curious to know more about the intervention that was done in Mary DiMaggio's biology class that seemed to be effective. Was it just reading the test?
Yeah, I think, and I briefly talked with her about it. She said that he started going out with, during assessments with some of the kids that went out with special ed. And so the tests were read to him. Okay. And then eventually she ended up actually, he was able to dictate the answers, and they would scribe for him the answers.
And these were short answer or essay?
Yeah, short answer to anything.
Kind of like what Linda's doing in chemistry.
That's what it sounded like. Yeah, we can follow up with Mary.
Okay.
some more. But I think, and I think Linda hit it right on the head. What we're looking at is, in my mind, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts, is we're looking at two things. How to help him communicate what he knows within his content classes, and then how to improve those weaknesses. I mean, it's pretty clear, the reading, the writing, are skills that he needs improvement on. And what do we need to do as a school to help him build those skills up? You know, and yes, there's writing components and there's expectations and rubrics in all the classes. And he'll have practice with that. But it's clear that there's a disconnect there somewhere, and that he's going to need some more help with. Just looking at some of the data that we have on the board, he is very inconsistent throughout his academic career. I mean, he started out grade 2, advanced proficient in everything, you know, and then from there he's bounced between minimal, basic, pretty much in the reading and math, and you know, up and down. Math is kind of coming out as more of a strength of his relative to his academic skills. It's been more consistent across the board throughout his history, but that reading and the writing, and that's that communication piece. How do you communicate what you know in a classroom? And I think we can.
But yet he's so verbal.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
he does oral things, he has no problems with that. It's just expressing that in writing.
One of the things, as I look back at his CUME file, there was an IEP referral done in, I believe it was 2004, and I think that puts him at either 2nd or 3rd grade, for parents' referral for possible dyslexia. The results of that were, they did some achievement tests, and they did a Woodcock cognitive makeup, which is, you can kind of equate it to an IQ. And that was, and when you think about the bell curve where 100 is the average, he came out at a 103. His verbal skills, when you looked at the 3 main areas, his verbal skills were his strength, were his higher, and then the other skills were a little bit lower. But his specific written language was at, his standard score was an 86, which was low average, the bottom end of that standard deviation. And his reading fell within the average range. When he broke that down, his reading comprehension was a 94, and his fluency was a 90. And that was back second, third grade-ish. I'm guessing probably after he began to struggle. I'm just making an assumption here, but the Teir1 was done earlier in second grade. They probably saw those scores, and then he was struggling in class and said, "No, what's going on here?" And I'm sure that triggered some kind of a response. So that's the only intervention or any possible, intervening that was done with Jimmy according to his CUME file. He did not have a red folder that we could find that came up with Butler. We looked for that yesterday. So there, as far as any other interventions that were done, we don't have record of those. I'm sure they happened. I mean, they happened last year, just by hearing from some of his teachers. You guys are all doing that now. So I think if we can maybe kind of transition over to some brainstorming here, for some of our suggestions, but I think if we look at it in 2 ways, what can we do within the classroom to help him be able to communicate effectively what he really does know? And then what do we do for this kid long term, as far as those reading and written language skills go? What do we need to provide as a school district, to help him increase those skills? Those are going to be things in addition to his core classes, his regular classes.
One thing that might be interesting too is I started off with a learning style test this year, and he was clearly kinesthetic.
Yeah.
Like clearly I put him into groups according to their learning, and he was, okay, you're in kinesthetic, because his results were so strong for that category. So I thought it was interesting.
Okay. If we could do a quick activity, take a minute or 2, and do you guys agree that we're looking at 2 different, we want to make sure, if there's something else out there, I don't want to stomp on anybody else's view. And I don't know him at all, but that was kind of my thinking as I was doing some research for him. So if we could, let's just brainstorm the left side here. What are some of the accommodation things that we can do within the classroom? And let's just take a minute or 2 to kind of jot those down, and then we'll kind of compile a list here. popcorn and kind of just bounce around. And we want to start, Mike?
I thought it'd be great to write a 1 to 2 minute journal at the end of every class where he could summarize what he learned in that class that day. Once again, to start flexing that writing muscle of his.
Okay.
I said, some type of skeleton structure for his writing pieces.
Scaffold or skeleton?
I call it skeleton.
Skeleton structure, okay.
Whatever.
Skeleton structure for writing? Is that?
Yeah, like an outline that you put,
Okay.
like your main idea, and then they kind of put it in, and then before they write it into a piece.
Okay.
One of the things I was looking at is pairing him with a stronger partner, and I'm thinking about that especially in labs. I have to go back and look into who his lab partner is.
My thing was, make sure that we're grading him. How would I write that down? Grading him on the summatives, separating what you want with the summatives. So, making sure that when we're looking at the rubric, we can take that writing part out and grade the writing separate from the rest of the content. And make sure that the teachers understand that that's okay. That's the whole point of grading for learning, is to break down those skills. Now, it doesn't always, talking about assigning letter grades and all that's a different thing at some point. But just making sure that we're separating his summative grading from the writing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Another thing I thought of just while I was sitting here is I was given some the chemistry lessons that are all on videotape. And I think if he could hear people orally presenting some of this stuff, that might help increase his vocabulary and his, so using some videotape material.
Okay.
A vocabulary, it seems like with both Jenny's class, Amy's class, and Linda's, he's really getting exposed to a lot of higher level words. So, just writing down words he's never heard of, been exposed to familiarize himself with that.
Okay.
Typing items so that he could use tech and use the clues from Word to help him with his grammar and structure.
I wonder if it would make a big difference if you let him, instead of having somebody else scribe for him, what if he just typed his responses and I think we might get a lot better results that way.
Yeah.
I think I would definitely try that before I let somebody else write down the answers. Type
That's
that.
a good idea. I think when we talk about the retaking of the test and how that hadn't really showed any real progress, making sure that we take things like the ALC time and be able to, before he does that retake, reteach some of that stuff, maybe break down where he was struggling. So reteach before retake. Anybody else?
Well, with the typing items, I would even go with technology more and say, let's give him a handheld recorder so he's got strong oral skills, so let's build on those oral skills. And the more he could start transcribing what he's saying into the recorder would really enhance his skills.
That's good.
Or maybe just a reading class. I mean, they take language arts up until 8th grade, but not all of them have gained proficiency in language arts.
And same with writing class too.
Absolutely.
providing, and to kind of go along with the writing class, but it's kind of like in between. I know we've talked about in the past having writing labs and things like that, so when you have an essay for something like your class, Amy, giving him an opportunity maybe during an ALC time or after school or during lunch, you know, in the media center or something, to have a writing lab where he's able to bring his assignment in and really sit down, and after he's done what he did for you, and then kind of revise and edit.
One of the things we're doing in social studies is reading. Our targets are reading, writing, communication, and content. So we're specifically looking at sort of streamlining the process and creating a standard rubric for all those targets, but then also creating a standard format for providing those activities in class. So reading, for example, David and Rachel have come up with a format based off of the ACT reading guidelines or whatever it may be that kind of streamlines the process. So if he ever has an activity where he's going to be assessed specifically on reading or writing, it'll look the same, not the same content, but look the same every time he comes into my classroom. So maybe that's something that once we do get that done, we can pass on to other people as well.
So let's develop that format so
And they'll be used to it. Every time they come in, they know what it's going to look like.
One thing I think, and I don't know if this goes on the list here, but one thing, and you didn't get any feedback from his math teachers
No,
at all?
not yet.
And I think we need to take, at least I feel like I need to take a look at that, because a lot of chemistry is math-based, and he's, like I mentioned, he's not showing any, like for a problem where you have to do the math type work, he just puts an answer down, which sometimes it's correct and sometimes it doesn't, but I would like to see what he is doing in math. So I would really like to see that from him.
Let's just stop there. Those are awesome
Can I
ideas.
just ask what, like if we were saying, pinpoint a grade level, what reading level is he at?
I don't think I'm comfortable making that assessment right now. I think the easiest maybe for Amy, if we look at the MAP score, 9th grade, he was at a 200 in the fall and 184. I mean, those are pretty low. I don't have a grade equivalent to that, but you're looking, I mean, if I had to guess, if you're gonna make me say something, you're probably looking between a 3rd and 5th grade type comprehension level.
Okay.
I mean, they're not, the 184 is pretty low. And I'm curious to see what, I mean, that's an example of the inconsistency. To go, to fall 16 points on a map is, that's significant. I mean, that's major. And that's during the school year. I could almost rationalize it when you go from the spring to the fall and you have summer and we see dips like that typically, but typically those dips are only 2 or 3 points. When they come back, they'll have their map test from the spring, they'll come back in the fall and it'll be maybe 2 or 3 points lower than what they did in the spring, and we count that to the 3 months of the summer. And they, rather quickly they pick it up. But I don't have an explanation. And that's something that we need to do. We need to identify, and we'll put that up there too, is identify his Lexile level. And we can do that pretty easily. I mean, we do an assessment on him. And that's gonna help the classroom teachers be able to get materials that are at his level.
Right.
So I think identifying specific Lexile reading level. Because that's going to be, I think that's going to be key. You can be able to find some more appropriate materials in your classes that go along with the content that you're working on. So I think, why don't we stop here? I know we're not completely done, but we're coming to the end. I'll record all this stuff. We'll take it back to RTI on Monday. And from there, I think one of my goals will be, let's compile this list with some explanation, and then send it out to all of his teachers. This is what this is the start. You know, this is definitely not the end, but this is just a start to help him along the process.
Sure.
And hopefully the RTI team then will be able to kind of add to this, and we really get down to that right side then too, along those long-term things for him. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you guys taking the
Oh,
time.
This has been good, I mean, I'm already, wheels
Yeah.
are spinning about things I can do to, yeah.
Great, great. Thank you, thank you.
Mhm.